Okay, welcome to our third interview in our SaaS Focus Series, the SaaS Focus Series by Cloud 360 Accounting. Today, I am joined by Colin Hewitt, who is the CEO and co-founder of Float. Colin, thanks for joining us today for a bit of a chat around your SaaS business.
Great to be here. Good to be here.
Good stuff. So just to kick things off, can you do a little introduction to who you are, what you guys are all about, the problems that you solve?
Yeah. So, like Kieran, you said, I'm the CEO and founder of Float. Prior to Float, I ran a digital agency, and as part of that, I was keeping tabs on our cash flow in a spreadsheet. Really, as the rise of cloud accounting came around, we just felt like there must be a better way than me manually updating a spreadsheet every week, and wanted to build software and have a go at building our own product. So that was really where the idea came from. And we're almost I guess started as a side project and launched it in probably 2012. Yeah. Very early days, so we're coming up on 10 years next year. So it's been a bit of a great journey.
I remember actually Float in its early days, way back in 2012, and I can remember there were only a couple of sort of other platforms, other apps doing something similar, and a couple of them I remember at the time, I don't think they even exist anymore. So you guys have kind of stayed the course anyway.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something about that longevity that we were really passionate about solving the problem, and it wasn't just about making money in the early days. It was about building something that people love to use, and in the midst of that, also just loved the journey of learning how to run a business at scale and think about how to build product. And it's frustrating, when I look back and think sometimes of how we just thought it would be a straight line to getting things in place, and it's actually it's taken a lot longer, but I think we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, which is really what I wanted to set out to want to do. So yeah, I think that it does take longer than you think. And somebody once told me it always takes 7 years to get a business to where you need to get it to. And so we're not even past that stage. And it's interesting. I think 7 years was a threshold, but yeah, I think we're still now looking at the next 7 and thinking, what could we do and how could we, go from the size we are now to, an order of magnitude bigger.
And sort of the problem that you guys were solving was really to do with the fact that, and it's probably still a major challenge, is that for cash flow projection purposes for small businesses, spreadsheets and Excel and Google Sheet is probably still the majority player in terms of the tools that's been used. So, and you talked about sort of the journey you've had for that 7-year period. What's the sort of major challenges that you still see, maybe the challenges that you still have as an ongoing basis, I suppose, Colin, as a SaaS business, maybe getting your message across, but also what were the maybe 3 major challenges you found in that period?
Yeah, so I think what was interesting was we started off, we were building just for a product called Free Agent, and they had a similar type of customer to who I was as a user when I started using the product. And so we kind of really understood our target customer. When we realized that wasn't a big enough marketplace, and if we were going to grow, we needed to expand out. And around that time, Xero was gaining popularity, and we integrated with Xero. But what that did for us was it was fantastic in terms of the size and the scale of the customer base, but it also diversified the customer base really, quite, significantly. And that meant that we had all these different types of customers, from solo businesses up to, large 50, 100 people companies coming in and wanting different things. So the product direction became really difficult. And what we've had to do more recently is really dig into the type of and the target customer that works well for Float, and not try to serve everybody. Because I think, if you don't, you need to start small. Like it's the classic example of Facebook starting with one university campus and then moving on to further university campuses before moving into different areas. And you really get to understand your customer better that way. So that's been a big one, is defining the customer. I think another one has been building a leadership team. And again, for us, we realized that I can't continue to do all the things, from ordering new rechargeable batteries to, to presenting to the board, to raising money, all that. So we needed to build a leadership team. And that, again, when you've never done that before at that sort of scale, you're bringing in experienced people. And I suppose in the early days, inexperienced people as well, because you can't afford experienced people. So lots of lessons there around building a leadership team and how to structure that, that is a different challenge, because it goes from being a very, like, we went from 5 people which were almost like co-founders to, you start building, not hierarchy, but you've got different people, higher levels of responsibility. And that means that you just have to, hold those people to account. And it's a big lesson for me in terms of doing it. So that was another big one. And then, I guess just product management at scale as well. Like you can't do all the things, and you have to say no, and you have to understand, you have to help your team understand which direction you're going in. So I've had to dig quite deeper into where are we going, where do I see things going, and how can I give the product team a steer without taking too much of a steer and too much of a direction into that where they need to go. So they need an element of autonomy there. So lots. That's just 3, but there's loads more on a similar level.
I think there's a couple of good things coming out of that, because the previous interview we did an interview with James Ashford for Go Proposal. And James had the exact same point about the ability to say no, and the ability to kind of know your direction as well. And I think that sometimes, maybe, I don't know if it's a misconception about SaaS businesses, or sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for SaaS businesses, whereby trying to be all things to all people just spreads your net far too wide and just a bit too thinly. And James had made the exact same comment as well. It's all about, look, we're going to focus on this, this, and this. And if we get this really, really right and really good, then we're going to satisfy a lot of people well. And that, I think that attracts, it maintains your customer base and maybe reduces churn rates, Colin, but also then spreads the word amongst the sort of niche areas that you're looking to focus on as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's better to get, everybody says it's better to get a group of loyal followers. And because you have similar challenges, and then you can spread out from there. But if you're too diverse at the beginning, you're going to be disappointing. You can't run a fast food venue and a fine dining venue in the same time. You have to pick, and you'll if you try and do both of those, you'll disappoint one group of customers who are looking for a totally different experience. And we've definitely had to dig into that, and it is hard, because we want to support all businesses, and it's kind of like, we're going to get there, but we have to start somewhere, and be a bit more targeted first.
The other thing that it's like, the journey you're talking about as well has been sort of going like this, a sort of linear format, whereas I don't know, do you think that, I also think there's a misconception about SaaS businesses, which is very much they're like this for a while, and then there's like some kind of investment fund and it goes like this, and then it goes like this. So these kind of very steep steps, which I don't think it does happen with some businesses, but that steep step is such a major challenge for a lot of, especially for the co-founders of a SaaS business.
Yeah, I mean, every time you take funding, that's a whole, other topic. But every time you take funding, the expectations are higher, and you're committing to bigger outcomes as well. So you can't just continue in the same way. And I guess we've been quite, we've always tried to take as little funding as we needed to get to the next stage. And we've always tried to get back to cash flow positive, to give ourselves the option as to, not be forced into taking money from bad fit investors. And so I think that's been really good for us to be able to have the time to do it. Whereas a lot of venture capital is about, we'll invest in 30 companies and 2 of them will succeed. And the rest of them, it's better that they fail fast. And so that hasn't been our intention. Our intention is to succeed. And if it takes us longer, then that's okay. So we've there's definitely been those kind of inflection points, and that's come through through some of the hires that we've had to make, and bring in. Opening in the office in Australia for us was one of those points. Is like, we're going to do this or not, and once you do that, then you're supporting a team in a different time zone, and it's a huge amount of work, but it's really worth it. So yeah, lots of those moments have happened, and sometimes it's anticipating the next one as well. Like, what's the next stage for us? We're 30 people at the moment. What are we going to need in the future to be able to to get to 50 people? What are we going to need at 100 people? And what funds do we need to be able to make that work as well?
Yeah. And if we just sort of revisit the sort of journey that you guys were on from 2012 to now, talk about how your team has grown and how it's developed, and also talk about then the management team or board, if it is, Colin, at what point in time they kind of kicked in and how that's developed.
Yeah, so I mean, the stages that I have in my head are, there was the 5-person stage, whenever I call that the boy band phase, when it was being 4 other guys, and it felt like, we had lunch together every day, and it was just like we'd sit around the same table and lean over and tell each other, like, that doesn't look right, or let's fix the text on that page, and that was great, and I really enjoyed that phase because you're very much in the action. Then we realized, I think we need to bring in marketing, and that sort of we almost went from, so we had no marketing people to 3 marketing people, because our head of marketing then hired 2 more people. So it's that in the early stages, it's trying to be managing and operational at the same time. It's really difficult. And then we added in customer support and design. We outsourced design at the beginning, and then we brought design in-house. And so I think that took us up to about 15, and then that was a threshold for us when it was like we really need a senior team, and our current CTO was moving on, and so we hired a new CTO, a COO, which is a new role for us, Chief Operating Officer. He also functioned as a CFO, and a new CMO too. So we basically had a 4-person senior team, and then it was like, right, how do we meet and set the strategy for the business for them to manage their teams, and what do they need? And they were able to then go out and hire to essentially get us to where we are now, which is 30 people. So but what we've actually found is, our engineering team stayed relatively small within that. So we've more developed products, customer support, sales, operations, that kind of thing. So it's all, and essentially in a tech company, your engineering team is your kind of core resource. So all of those people to support 6, essentially with 6 engineers, or 6 engineers supporting those 6 people, supporting the rest of the people in the organization. It's we'd love to have more engineers, and that's certainly that feels like the next stage for us, is to scale that team up now again. But we were really careful not to just keep adding engineers, because otherwise you've got lots of capacity to build stuff, but you're building wrong stuff, or you're not able to support the customers, or you're not marketing to the right people. So that was a challenge for me, because I was an engineer originally, so I wanted to hire lots of engineers and just go. But I think it's been right to scale back and get the balance. So across success and marketing and ops and all of that stuff first.
I think if you go too big too fast in any business, it's a massive sort of learning curve, and there's for me personally, I would feel there's too many bumps in the road to get and negotiate. So having that managed growth pattern, even to the point we know investment is going to be necessary to get to the next stage as a SaaS business, probably a much more sensible approach. But what I would ask is, from an investment perspective as well, that obviously brings its own challenges, and there's a timing commitment and so on to get to that stage. But do you think that adds more pressure on in relation to, if you take investment, there's definitely a completely different sort of scenario that you're dealing with then?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I think for me, every time I take investment, I'm committing, I think I can get a 10x return for these investors, because they can put their money somewhere else. I don't want to lose their money. So you're playing much kind of higher stakes at that that level. And if you're bringing in investors who are going to be value add investors, then you're competing for their time and attention versus the other opportunities they have. So you've got to make it worth their while. And therefore, we're always going with a plan, saying, look, here's where we are right now, here's where we're going to get to. And you really have to deliver against that. And obviously it always sounds good in theory, and then you go out and try stuff and it doesn't work out the way you expected it to work out. But I think that's part of the learning journey. And really what we're trying to do is much faster experimentation to say, look, we tried this, we tried that, we tried the other, and some of these things are going to work and some of them aren't. And so I think that's what our investors want to see. They want to see rapid iteration, and I think investors have to know what stage they're getting involved in, or they're obviously doing their due diligence. So they're not expecting it just to kind of go in a straight line either, if they've been there before. But yeah, no, absolutely, it's a pressure, because at that point when you're bringing investors in, you realize that, like, if I'm their job is to get their return, and if I'm not delivering, I could be out of a job here. So it's very different to just running your own business. You're part of a system now that needs to function as well. So I've had difficult times whenever I've had harsh feedback from the investors, and you have to take that on the chin, and often it's needed and necessary.
Two questions I have on the back of that is, if I or anybody was starting a SaaS business now with whatever the product may be, what advice would you give for a sort of new startup SaaS business coming onto the market, and especially around investment and funding rounds? What particular tips or advice would you have around that?
So my big advice for people who are in that position is, can you really prove the proposition before you build the product? Because it's really tempting to think, I'm just going to go out and build a product. It's a bit like, you might see somebody opening a coffee shop and they have this dream of it being, how it's going to be and it's going to be successful. But actually, a lot of coffee shops fail, right? So have you sat and watched the footfall outside the restaurant to see if people are actually walking past the shop? Have you interviewed your customers to think about what's different about what you're offering, and are they looking for a new solution? And do you have something unique that's going to get people excited? And I think those are all things you can actually prove out in SaaS. Those are things you can prove out before you build anything. You can launch a blog. You can go out and you can speak to people and say, look, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you have this? Do you resonate with this problem? Tell me honestly. And it's a bit like Skyscanner example, where before they built their product, they just had a spreadsheet of cheap flights that they sent around different people. And so I think there's a lot you can do now. You can put up landing pages and see, does anybody click on this? Does anybody want to sign up to the beta before we launch it? So I think it's just so tempting to try and get stuck in the building, and that's the worst way to do it, because it's so costly and it's so slow to learn, and you might get one or two shots at it. But actually really doing your customer research and finding out, can we attract customers? Because if you've only got 10 customers interested at that point, if you can't get 100 people signing up for your beta, then there's a good chance you don't really have the market yet. So you need both. You need to be able to build product, and you need to be able to market it. And I think a lot of people think build it and they'll come kind of thing, and it'll take off. But what we find is it's not like that. We realized at one point we can have the best product, but if we don't know how to sell it and market it and get it out there, we're not going to win. Somebody else will come along who knows how to do that better, and our better product it's not going to be around. So you have to be able to do both.
And is there a big challenge nowadays as well? Because in terms of building a product, and you're right, I do hear a lot of people just getting so engrossed in, like, I'm going to just start building this and see where we go from there. But I think there's a challenge now that tech is moving so quickly, integrations is moving so quickly, that, and I've seen that in cloud accounting, Colin, over the last number of years, whereby there are certain bits of certain products that maybe are, not that they're not fit for purpose, but it was probably never thought, envisaged the way certain things would go, and they're just not as joined up as they could be. So holding back, I suppose, a wee bit, and maybe building a bit at a time, but getting the research done in the first and foremost as they, what does my niche customers really want? What do they really need? What's the solution that they need?
Yeah.
There seems to be, the challenge is just trying to, I suppose, build something that's going to be a bit more generic and flexible in the longer term, rather than just too sort of structured at the outset.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't, what you think, if you're really about solving people's problems at that point, not building the solution that you think they're going to need. I just think it's very rare that people know exactly what their customers need first time around. Certainly that's been our experience, is like if we presume to know, we can go out and build the wrong thing. And it's just, people want to tell you what they want. It's just a lot of times we don't like to ask. And so I reckon, with 20 good customer interviews, you start triangulating, like, are we hearing the same thing over and over again? Is this really the biggest pain point, or is this a nice to have that isn't going to really grab people's attention? And obviously, there's other things you start to do, that good products need as well, like, hooks that build things into your product. So there's things like, there are certain things that, you get into the kind of technical side of things, which I think you can add, but fundamentally, have you landed on the problem that enough people have? And is there a price point that people are willing to pay as well? Is there a business model around it? Because people are like, yeah, I would do that, but I wouldn't pay more than $5 for it. Then you can figure out how many customers you're going to need to make that sustainable business. And often people underestimate just how many people they're going to need. And they're like, one guy said to me recently, like, why do you need a team of 30 people to build this product? And so, I think it's that sense of it's really, I mean, I would have thought like that when we started off as well. Like, I thought, well, we'll be able to do this with 12 people. We just need 6 engineers, a couple of marketers, a couple of support people, and that'll be it. And actually, if you're really going to have people be at a strategic level, they can't be operational as well. So, it does, it's a learning curve, but I think start with 20 customer interviews, and that will tell you a lot.
That kind of brings me to my next question as well, Colin. I've only a couple of questions. It's around the key sort of financial metrics. Like, you guys are constantly measuring. I know you'd mentioned there about the aim is get into cash positive situation with your monthly recurring revenue and so on. So what's the sort of 3 or 4 key metrics that you're always keeping an eye on in your SaaS company?
Yeah, so we use a product called ChartMogul, which deals with SaaS metrics really nicely. It's expensive, but we find it's really useful because you can get a lot. You can go really deep on that product. So obviously, monthly recurring revenue is a big one for us. Like, how much we bring in every month, and that always lets you know. Well, if your monthly expenditure is the same as your monthly income, then you are cash flow positive. So that's always a big one for us to keep track of. The other things are average revenue per account, so ARPA. That shows you how many people are upgrading to higher plans. And so, what's if that ARPA is increasing over time, then that's a good thing. Lifetime value then would be a sort of follow on from that, to see, if our customers, if they're only sticking around for 12 months, then, and your ARPA is £50 a month, then you can sort of say, well, the lifetime value is only £600. But if it's 5 years, then, it's 5 times that. So it's a very different thing. And then you can spend more to acquire customers. So those are the kind of things. The other thing is churn. What speed are people leaving the product at? What's the kind of percentage of customers you're losing every month? So that's one thing. And then the other one we're looking at is monthly active users. So we might have thousands of customers paying us every month, but if only a handful of those are using the product every month, then we know those people are more likely to churn. So we call that MAU, and that's a big factor for us to consider. How much are people actually using the product? Because just paying is a lagging metric, and at some point those people that are not using it and engaging, they're going to cancel. And some products, like the likes of Xero, are lucky because, people have to pay their taxes at the end of the year. If you
Yeah.
don't use Zero for 6 months of the year, you're still probably going to keep using it, because you have to pay your taxes. Whereas with Float, it's easy for people to, if they stop using the product, they might say that's it. I should cancel this, and I'm not, because I'm not using, I'm not getting the value. So yeah, so that's a big factor for us. So yeah, metrics are fascinating, and there's lots more that we check in we've got a dashboard we go through every week as a leadership team.
Yeah.
Just kind of another one is NPS, Net Promoter Score, just checking how happy are our customers. And we ask them out of 10, how likely are you to recommend this? And if they say less than an 8, or less than a 9, if they say, then they're either a neutral or a detractor. So really, you're looking for those 9s and 10s to see are people really engaged. So yeah, we've really had to dig into this data, and that's without getting into any of the marketing stuff that is all about tracking customers from when did we acquire them, and when did they convert, and all of that stuff. So yeah, the data is huge, and it's just been ongoing, and it's messy, and the amount of times we've had to spend like just coming back and sorting it out and realizing that our Google Analytics wasn't tracking this right or something else. But it's great. Our head of marketing now is really into that, and it's just, and there's lots of good agencies out there that can support you too. So if you can get your data right from the outset, it does really help.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of charts, dashboards out there now that'll do that. Chartmogul being one of them, and there's a number of other ones as well. And I think probably the messaging behind the product is sometimes a bigger thing, because it's like trying to, for you guys, I'm just thinking, trying to get the message about the value of always looking at your cash flow forecast is a big thing, as opposed to, look, this isn't something you should sign up to just for a particular purpose. This is like, we use Float. I use it every week and every month to see where we're at and to tweak things. So getting the messaging right to say, look, that's what you need this for. And this is why you should be looking at that on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we talk about a lot. Like, we're the CM. I was the CM. I wanted this to be our dashboard for our business. If we can't trust us to make decisions with, then we're doing something wrong. So we've actually moved from monthly active users as our main metric to weekly active users, because if you're not looking at this every week, then you're not going to need it. You're not going to
get the value.
So yeah, we really want to be that kind of much more regular. And then it is about messaging. It's about communication, and it's about what's going to bring people back into this. And because you've got to build habits. Not everybody is going to be a pro cash flow forecaster, when they start out. So how do you help people become great at it? And that's mixture of education and then reminders and prompts and nudges along the way. So all of that.
Brilliant. Last question is, you guys, I suppose, now are almost at the 10-year mark, which is a big thing. What still gets you out of bed in the morning? What excites you about continuing the journey with Float?
Yeah, good question. So for me, the most exciting thing is getting to build a company that people love coming to work at. And there's definitely been times when it's been hard. You these seasons if you feel like you're taking over the world, and then seasons where you may have a few people that have moved on, or you've got some bad feedback, or you're struggling in some other area. But when ultimately I see people loving what they do and enjoying the challenge, and seeing, we've had a big focus on being able to be yourself at work as well, and not try to be something else. So I think, we really, especially over lockdown, I think there's been some really good conversations and support for each other. And I think if we build a company to go on and build a large company that's at the heart of, then that really motivates me. And I think we'll have done something really good in the world. And hopefully, to do that, we know we need to serve our customers as well. But for me, it's about, if we've created a great place to work, then there's so few of those businesses that seem to be out there. And I know there's a lot more than, there are lots, but there's also just so many bad examples of, people that I hear all the time, or people are just not loving what they do and loving where they work. So that gets me out of bed in the morning. And but also being able to solve great problems and and see breakthroughs that where you were stuck, so that,
Yeah.
that enable us to fundamentally go out and make this company great. That does it for
Brilliant.
me.
It's very much like culture, core values
Yeah,
means you're getting the right people in the right mind frame to build the right product to solve give people the solutions as well. So
yeah,
and you're right. There's probably, I think that's more of a focus now post pandemic as well, Colin. That
mm,
the ability to work remotely and so on has created a different type of working environment as well. So it's important to make sure get the team culture right to keep the journey going, no matter what business you're in.
yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and work is, you see people like hitting these kind of walls sometimes where they need to break through, and they're stuck, and then when they do that, actually makes a huge it's a huge jump for them in their life to be able to go, right,
Yeah,
I had to have this difficult conversation with somebody, and I pushed through and did it, and I feel like I could do that again, and and now I'm able to lead people, and now I'm able to have difficult conversations, and stand up for myself and be more assertive about what I want to do. And
yeah,
it's great to see that happening, and get to be a part of that. And we've had some people change roles in the company, and I just love seeing people stepping into new opportunities and getting more confident, and sometimes I'll go on to other companies, but that's great. That's the whole point. So
yeah.
it does really come back to the people side of things for me. But there's nothing also like reading a review or hearing about somebody that does depend on your product and feel
Yeah.
like that's great. There's people globally that we get to build something for too. So
Yeah,
there's a
brilliant.
lot of good stuff in that.
Very good. No, it's every day is a school day.
Well, it makes all the hard stuff worthwhile. I think there's so much,
Aye,
definitely a lot of hard stuff that maybe is another conversation, but I think having those two kind of weigh each other up is, yeah, it's a
yeah,
balance.
brilliant. Good stuff. Well, that's us done and dusted. Just want
Thanks.
to thank you very much for your time today. That's been very, very useful. You've been very good to share so much of the journey at Float. Wishing you obviously well and the team there for the future. And thank you so much again for your time today, Colin.
Brilliant. Yeah, and look, thanks for all that you're doing as well in the community. I know it's always been great to see your posts and your positivity coming out, and I think it's really impacting people as well, and inspiring people in the cloud space, especially in Northern Ireland where you're pioneering over there. So good work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. We'll keep going, keep doing what we're doing.